Hey everyone, welcome to Hard Knock Crypto. Today we're going to be talking about some really exciting things. We'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin, but we're going to spend a lot of time on real world assets, RWA.
Hey, Lenny, what's going on?
Hey Andrew, what's going on, buddy? It's a lot of energy you're bringing in there. I don't know if I
Yeah,
can keep up with you today.
I'm so pumped for today. It's probably the best day of my life. I don't know, but
Every
we'll
day.
see what happens.
I know.
Every day,
Living large, man. I know you
living
are.
large. I'll
Yeah.
tell you. Yep, May is knocking on the Dubai heat. We're hitting the three digits, 100 degrees and above, and so it's gonna be like this till November. What about New York? Is it crazy or is it
Man,
nice?
I'll tell
Spring?
you. I was really looking forward to it when I saw that it was going to be like 74 degrees yesterday, Fahrenheit. And I was like, wow,
Dang,
this is going to be great.
that is great.
Except all of a sudden it got to 74 and I'm like, it's cold. I'm kind of
Yeah,
cold. Maybe I'm
hmm.
used to the Dubai, India
Heat.
heat,
Yeah,
right? But
must be.
I'm wearing like a sweatshirt
There you
in
go.
74-degree weather. So I don't know. I must be the strange guy, but it's
It's
okay.
that old man
I'll
energy.
take it. It
Eh,
Yeah, it is the old man energy, man. I am getting
I'll,
older.
I'll tell you what else is bringing the heat. That Bitcoin price. What do you think about that these days?
Oh, yeah, man. I wish like 3 weeks ago, we all were just dumping tons of money into it when it
Yeah,
was like 83.
yeah,
And everybody was like, oh, I wonder what's going on with this. Why? What's going on? And
yeah,
now here we are. I think what it was at 94 or something like that.
yeah.
And man, if you if you if you made the move,
You
you'd
made the move.
be man if you just made the move. But I'm excited. I think that we're seeing a move in the market. Um Stock market's going up,
Yeah,
and who knows? We might get a trade deal today,
we
from
might.
what I've heard. From what
Isn't it
I've heard.
wild? Like, there's chaos and panic in the markets, and if you watch anybody that talks about markets and that kind of deal, it's a tale as old as time. Like, the world is ending. You might as well like take all your money out and bury it in your backyard so that it don't lose value. And then all of a sudden there's hope. And it's interesting in Bitcoin. I was having a conversation with a friend who started buying Bitcoin about 4 months ago at whatever high 90s.
Right.
And he's not putting in a ton, but for him, he's like invested in high 90s, and then it dropped to like 80s, and then it dropped to 75. And so he is talking to me and he's genuinely asking, how can I make money? So he's like early 30s, and he's like, oh, I think I need to buy real estate. I probably just need a property that I can rent out. And I said, what happened to Bitcoin? Because I had talked to him a lot, and he's like, oh, it's not doing anything. And I said, well, Bitcoin is kind of like a coiled snake, and it will sit there for a long time, and it just doesn't do anything. And you're like, oh, like this is done for. And if you look at the chart over since like February, this is mid 80s, low 80s, mid 80s, low 80s,
That's right.
75, drops from 80. And then literally in like 3 days, it went from 84 or 82 or whatever it was to 95. And it's just like done. And now it's sitting there again. And it's going to do the
Right.
same thing. But if you miss those moves, then it's over. And that's why I would
Right.
say everybody needs to get comfortable with being extremely bored, because these
Yeah.
moves, if you look at a chart, these moves happen like genuinely 4 or 5 times a year, and that's it. The rest of the time, super boring. And so my buddy, I convinced him to just do a little more DCA, do it monthly if he can, weekly, and he's pretty happy right now.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people who did that are very happy. We've always talked about it in long view. I think everybody needs to have a long view. Don't get discouraged, right? Every dip
Yeah,
is an opportunity, right? Don't look at your portfolio when there is a dip. Look at how I could add more to my portfolio during a dip.
Yeah.
right? I think you just have to shift your focus, and I think you do that. Generally, you're going to end up being happy, and you're glad that you did it. And so, I think we're exactly where we thought we were going to be. I don't think that you and I have said, sell. I don't think we've ever said sell. That's probably not
Yeah.
even in our vocabulary when it comes to Bitcoin. I think the only thing we've said is buy, right? And
Yeah.
so, and I think that when they make those connections and realize that that's the strategy here,
Yeah.
um, that I think that people will be happy. Now, I do say that to your friend, there will come a day when you will turn around and you'll say, "Hey, I could probably use my Bitcoin holding to go buy real estate." There's going to
Right.
come a time someday where he
Yeah.
is going to say, "I'm going to invest in real estate through digital assets."
Hmm. For sure.
That's going to happen. That's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of areas that people are going to be able to invest in, right, through crypto. That exists today. That
Yeah.
hopefully today you and I will have an opportunity to talk about a little bit.
Right.
I'm teeing it up for you.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, awesome.
The thing we want to talk about, I'm just trying to make it awkward. The thing we want to talk
I know.
about is
Thank you.
exactly that. And I remember watching a podcast 6 months ago,
Yeah.
and they were talking about mortgage backed Bitcoin and bringing Bitcoin more into the space of real world stuff. Like it's not just like magic internet money anymore. And it's not just going to be Bitcoin, but it's going to be other projects that are focused on this thing called real world assets. If you haven't heard of real world assets, RWA projects, this is the next thing in crypto. It's going to be what Larry Fink says is the tokenization of all things onto the blockchain. It's going to be stocks, it's going to be bonds, it's going to be real estate, and it is going to take the world by storm. And if you are not prepared for it, you will be left behind. Would you agree?
100%. So I think that really the struggle that people have had when we have conversations about Bitcoin or any digital asset, they're always asking us, well, where is the value,
Yes.
right? How is it tied to, like, why is Bitcoin 95,000? I don't understand, what is
Right.
it tied to, right? And that's always a hard conversation, I think, to help people through it. And we talk about scarcity, we talk about security, and we talk about, all kinds of things we talk about, right? Um, However, when it comes to real world assets, right, uh,
Right.
or when we talk about crypto and we talk about, okay, this concept of real world assets, what we're starting to see is now through tokenization, you have these tokens now that have value because they're tied to a real world asset.
Yes.
I think a possible, I don't know if it's a possible starting point for this conversation is, but for those who are familiar with, maybe this is too far, but Tether, for
Yeah.
example, right? Stablecoin, right? One Tether's equal to one USD
Dollar.
dollar, right?
Yeah.
It's to one US
Exactly.
dollar, right?
Right.
And so it's tied to the dollar.
Right.
What's the problem with the dollar that we've always talked about, right?
It's
It's
losing value.
inflationary, it's losing value, right? Fiat
Right.
currency. We've talked about
Yes.
this, I think, ad nauseum. We've talked about this
Right.
stuff. But Tether is buying up gold, and there's this other digital asset, Tether Gold,
Mm.
and they have their reserve in Switzerland
Yeah.
where they're holding it. Okay, now
Right.
everybody knows Tether's Gold is in Switzerland. Okay. Um, but right, the Tether Gold token is tied to the physical gold.
Yeah.
Kind of technically what we lost, right, when we
Right.
went off the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
Tether Gold. So if you go and you're like, hey, I want to go buy one unit, right, or one right, a tether gold, it's like trading at, guess what? The price of gold,
Mm,
right? Like $3,300 if
exactly.
you want to buy it. So if you're someone who says, "Listen, I want to take advantage of all the benefits of the blockchain. If I want to be able to take the benefits of the fact that I don't need to transport gold, right? Store gold. If I need to do all of those things, I could go buy Tether Gold and get the
Exactly.
same benefits of it, right? So during inflation, don't have to worry about it. It's tied to gold, right? It's a great store
Hmm.
of value from that perspective, right? It's
Right.
also, I could collateralize it, right? Because it's tied to the gold,
Yes,
right? So there's an example of, I think, a real world asset, right? That's been tokenized. That's fairly recent,
for
right?
sure.
Not, um, and I think they just bought a ton of gold more. Like they
Yeah.
keep, yeah. So anyway, I don't know. Does that help?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, that's like, if you think of supply and demand, gold demand is going through the roof, which is making the price of it also set record all-time highs. And it's things like this. And it's this idea of, if we can tie crypto to real world assets, real physical things, then we're getting the best of both worlds. Because
Right.
yes, like for 15 years, 16 years, it's like, oh, Bitcoin is magic internet money, it's not really worth anything. uh, and I mean, that's literally, it's partially true, but it's not, because of supply and demand, because the market has said this is the digital asset that the entire world wants. Therefore, that's why it's valuable.
Right.
Uh, but at the same time, if we can tie a physical asset to a digital asset, then you get the best of both worlds. Would you agree?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. I think what, and that's why the reason why we see more, like a lot of this traditional applicate like opportunities being,
Yeah.
now people are like, well, how can I tokenize this, right? So you see
Yes.
that in real estate, you see that, for example, we just talked about gold.
Hmm.
We're seeing all kinds of resources that are now, people are looking at and saying, well, how can I use the again, the blockchain and the
Right.
benefits of the of crypto, and how can we get the benefits, right? See both of best worlds, as you just stated, right? So
Right.
is, and that's when you said this is the next big thing,
Yeah.
and it's literally on the doorstep. In fact, I would
It's on the
say
doorstep.
the door is open. People are already starting to walk through it.
Yeah.
And so if you're watching us today, really start thinking about RWA. RWA is, I think, a great space to get into. Now, I think that we could probably jump into some examples and maybe to clarify some of the, this RWA concept a little bit more for people.
For sure. Yeah.
You and I actually, we were introduced to this much earlier,
Hmm.
right? And back in, and I, it just came to my mind before we came on, but when we went to Dubai, well, you were obviously there, but we went to Blockchain Life in
20,
2023.
23. Yeah.
Yeah, in October, I think it was 23, and we were
Hmm.
walking through and
Hmm.
and just kind of trying to meet all of the people. They had their booths and stuff. There was one booth where there
Hmm.
was a company that was selling
Yeah.
portions
Yeah.
of actual paintings.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that. Remember that, I
I
think you spoke to
do.
the rep.
I
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had valuable paintings,
Right.
right? And let's just assume for a second, I was just jumping and say, I think it's, the painting was $10,000.
Uh huh.
And they had broken up that painting into little sections, and you could buy an NFT that was tied to that little, section of the painting,
Yes.
and you owned that. And they
Hmm.
said, listen, you buy this NFT, it's $1,000. I don't know, I'm making up a number, but you
Hmm.
will own this specific spot of the actual painting.
Yes.
Well, when you buy that NFT, which is a digital asset,
Mm-hmm.
you, in fact, what you were doing, you were purchasing an RWA token,
Right.
which identified that you owned that actual little corner or piece of that actual painting,
Yes.
right? That's an example of an RWA, real world asset that's been tokenized.
Right. So it's hilarious that you bring up this instance because I don't think I ever told you the second part of that story.
Okay. Okay. Tell
So
me.
I started following that company, which is called 10101 Art, right after that. And then I don't even remember. I think it was like January of the next year, they launched one of their first projects, which was this picture, which is a Banksy. It's called Turf War by Banksy. And
Okay.
they sold like whatever. I think it's out of 1,000, and they sold a certain percentage at one time. And you could buy it through MetaMask with ETH, and it was a certain amount. And I bought one, and it is now worth $1 million. No, it's not worth $1 million.
Okay.
But
Oh man,
I
I was
have
gonna fall out of my chair right now. Thanks for telling me about that, buddy.
live. I'll say this though. It was a super interesting process. And it's funny that I never brought it up because I think because it was such a pain in the butt to do. And
Oh,
I felt like half the time I was getting ripped off and I wasn't sure if I was transferring it right. And then I wasn't even sure if I had the NFT because they didn't release it yet. And so, like, I followed it for a month and then I still wasn't sure that it was working, like, that I had it. And then finally, like, 6 months later, I realized that I have it in my wallet, but then I wasn't sure what I could do with it. And I think it kind of goes back to like your real time. In real time, we are learning about RWA. So
right.
this would be like you own a fraction of a. I own a fraction theoretically of a Banksy picture that is in an art house in Dubai,
Wow.
and I own like 1/1000th of it. Now, can I sell that? Yes, but again, it's super complicated and I don't really understand it. But it's in my MetaMask wallet, and I'm not sure like if it's worth the. I think I bought it for $100 worth of ETH, and I'm
Okay.
not sure if it's even worth that now or if it's whatever. But
But
this
you're
is
gonna
a
hold
lot.
on to it.
Because I I just don't know about it. But again, it's like we are experiencing in real time what that means of like, okay, this is an example of a RWA, a real world asset project. And
Right.
in 10 years, will it be like, you got one of those first Banksy pictures? That's wild. And I'm like, I don't even know how to get it yet, but it's somewhere on a wallet.
Well, now think about that. What you were going through back, and you did this October of
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah. So
I
yeah.
will say we're probably light years ahead now from where we
Right.
were. Remember,
Right.
there weren't even ETFs available at that time,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like that conversation was like, man, I don't know when that's going to happen. Obviously,
Hmm.
a lot of things have changed since then. I think that today the RWA market and your ability to, like, I bet if you went to that company again and you went through the process,
Yeah.
it would probably be easier for you today.
Maybe.
Um, Maybe you might want to try that out and see. All
We should
right.
do a follow up, and I like see how much this thing is worth. And I mean, it feels like the NFT market. Remember when you and I originally were talking NFTs like
That was all
three,
the
four
Yacht
years
Ape
ago?
stuff, man.
That was like 4 years
Was
ago,
going
and it
nuts.
was like that was all anybody cared about. I mean, when was the last time you legit talked to somebody about an NFT?
Zero conversations about
Right,
NFTs.
and that's all we
Actually, I
talked
will.
about 4 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's because. Well, look, those who are somewhat behind of
Hmm.
where we've kind of gotten to. I
Yeah,
think every once in a while they'll be like, when I start talking about crypto stuff, they'll be like, "Oh, like NFTs." I'm like,
yeah,
"Well, okay, now I kind of know where you're at,
right,
right? Like if you're
exactly.
talking about,
No, that's
right, like
exactly
you,
right.
right? So now we know where our starting point in this conversation
Yes.
is, right? And so that's what it does. However, I'm glad you brought up the NFTs because getting back to the RWA discussion,
Yeah.
eh, um, so I just gave you an example of an RWA project that included and involved NFTs.
Yes.
All NFTs are not RWA,
Mm.
right? So that what is it that yacht club ape? I can't
Ape
remember the
Yacht
name.
Club. Yes.
Yeah, the ape yacht. Sorry, I said it backwards. I'm kind of dyslexic, but ape yacht club. Yeah,
Right.
that's just a straight NFT. It's a digital asset, right?
Yes.
One of a kind. That's all it
Yeah.
is. It's not
But it's not a
tied to any.
RWA. Yes.
It's not an RWA. It's not
Right.
tied to any real world asset, right?
Right.
And so I think that that's where people need to be clear that that's the underlying piece to this. So I threw out an example to my friend yesterday because we're talking about real estate investment. He's into real estate investment, right?
Right.
Hey, Aaron, just want to throw you a shout out. So, and we talk a lot about real estate investment. I'm like, hey, one way you could probably do this is if you had a multifamily, you could tokenize ownership, sell the tokens, right,
Right.
through which you could raise the capital to purchase the property,
Yeah.
right? And then I took it a little bit further and I said, then what you do is you pay out, right, to the owners of the token based on your rental,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever your annual rental income is, right? You pay out, right, whatever and a return on their investment. Stretch it out to 15 years, right? Where they make back 7 to 8% return on that
Yeah.
investment.
Yeah.
And after that, right, you own the property,
Yep.
right? And I laid it out to him. I said, and it didn't cost you anything, and like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, wow, oh yeah, that is possible.
Yeah.
Like, there's a path there to do this,
I mean, I
right?
this summer I was back in Montana, and my brother-in-law, shout out to Ryan, has a very similar idea with building apartment buildings, especially in places in Montana where there's just very minimal of what is available. And if you could use a similar idea, putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet and then seeing Bitcoin type mortgages, and I mean, these ideas are coming out of the woodwork, and it is going to happen. And it's cool to be at this groundbreaking stage of, hey, what could be? And if you have enough know-how and spend enough time with Chat GPT, it'd be amazing to see the businesses that are coming out of this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. And we have. I'm kind of glad that we were introduced to some of this stuff earlier.
Yeah.
It gave us an opportunity to talk to people and meet people, and one of the projects that we were introduced to is the Kula project,
Yeah.
which that we were invited into, and so that's been really great that we invested in.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about that because that's a real
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
that's an RWA project
Right.
that really touches, I think, on areas that mean a lot to us, which is impact, community
Yeah.
impact.
Right.
Um, but they're doing some interesting things in that real RWA space, and I know that
Yeah.
you know
And
it
I
quite
mean,
well.
like we talk about fractionalized ownership. Kula DAO is a different type of project that's really focused on fractionalized governance and doing it in emerging economies. So, for example, Kula went into Zambia and purchased equity in a limestone mine. And with that limestone mine, they have tokenized governance with the people that are actually working in the limestone mine. So those people now get a say in how that limestone's mined. And so, like, for example, men all over Africa, all over Asia, almost all over the world usually get paid more than women. That's just how it is this hierarchical structure. They're like, oh, the men are doing the most work, so whatever. But they decided, hey, we're going to have equal pay. And we're going to do that through this DAO structure. And again, DAO simply means decentralized autonomous organization. And so what Kula's done, they put the limestone mine into their treasury. So their equity in that is part of the treasury. And then they've also tokenized this governance, which gives equals, for example, this equal pay. It gives the people at the limestone mine actually a voting right. But then if you purchase a Kula token, then you're sitting in New York, I'm sitting in Dubai, we're not in Zambia, but now we have say into voting rights. And they're going to be launching an app soon where we can have proposals and all kinds of different things. And it really is a one of a kind project currently, because no other projects are doing this. Like, yes, there's fractionalized ownership and there's like real estate that is happening, but fractionalized governance is like this mind-blowing idea, and they're doing it in these emerging markets. So like Zambia, they have projects in Malaysia, they have a project in Nepal, and the really the doors that are opening to them are wild. And so if you haven't checked out Kuladao yet, we highly recommend it. They are doing incredible things. They are light years ahead of so many other projects. They launched April 15th, and they're going to be players for a long time to come.
Yeah, and the interesting thing also, we talk about tokens that are tied to real world assets that have value, right? And so as they keep, for example, so we're just going to go back a second and talk about real world assets and tokens, right? Where do these tokens, just in general with RWA, right? Where the tokens get value? It gets value from the assets that are backing it, right?
Right.
And and in the case, for example, of Kula, you just mentioned some of those assets that are backing the token, and each time they're have this opportunity to add more assets onto their books, that is theoretically, as we've
Mm-hmm.
seen happen, historically across all markets, right?
Right.
You're going to see that the value of that token is going to increase, right? And that's
Of
kind of
course.
where, so when we invested, we were like, hey, this sounds like a great idea.
For
For
sure.
me, I was like, well, let me try to understand this when we first talked about it, which I think was like, I want to say it was 2 years ago, maybe a year and a right
About a
that
year
we
and a
were
half
introduced
ago.
to
Yeah.
a year and a half ago that we were
And I
introduced
mean,
to
they've
it.
been working on
I,
it for 4 years, so it's just launched, but it's a long time in the working.
Right. The way that my kind of simple mind works, right? I try to take this really complex idea and I try to attach it to something that I can understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember on one of the calls with them, I said, oh, this is kind of like Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, right?
Mm.
Like I could kind of, because in my
Explain
mind,
that. How does that
okay,
work?
okay. Just from a just from a very traditional view, right, of like how Berkshire Hathaway and how Warren Buffett works. You've heard, I hope people have heard the story of, Warren Buffett sitting and going through, the the New York Stock Exchange and looking at all the companies to see if he could find a diamond in the rough, a
No.
company that's undervalued. And that's how, he would do his homework and he'd find an undervalued company that he would then go and purchase into, right? Large
Right.
share. And then he finds this diamond in the rough that becomes a diamond. It increases in value. It adds value to Berkshire Hathaway. Then you see, like their stock value was last I remember once it was, I don't know what it's at today. I haven't looked because I can't afford,
It's
you know,
astronomical for
yeah,
one
I think it was
share.
like for
Yep.
one share, I think it was like $250,000 many years ago, right? So I
Yeah.
couldn't even afford it. But that's what, from a back Berkshire Hathaway perspective and Warren Buffett perspective, I
Mm-hmm.
said, oh, they're adding these really valuable, they're
Mm-hmm.
getting undervalued assets, right? Then and it increases the value, right, of the Berkshire Hathaway with the
Yeah.
assets that are on their books. Anyway, long story. So I said, "Oh, this is kind of like that." From a cooler perspective, I said, "You are finding these undervalued assets
Mm-hmm.
that you are now invested in. They are on your books.
Yes.
You are adding value to them and increasing the value. So, for example, governance and what's happening, and the impact, and then you know, with then a profits coming out of those
Yeah.
investments,
Yeah.
but it's adding value to their books, which adds value to the token. The
For
same
sure.
way Berkshire Hathaway adds value to the share,
Yeah.
right? And so that's how I understood it to be. And at that time, I said, "Oh man, I want to be a part. I want to invest in
Yeah.
this." And and so, um, yeah, Cool Dow, um, I think is a great project for people to look at. They have some great papers out there if you really want to understand about real
Yeah.
world assets and what they're doing. And you can go to there's a few exchanges you can go to
Yeah.
if you're interested in investing in them. So they're live.
Yeah, and it very in a very similar way, Michael Saylor is doing it with MicroStrategy. With I think it's called Strategy now.
Right.
Strategy is a Bitcoin company, and it has value because Strategy controls hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin. And in the same way Warren Buffett did with Berkshire Hathaway in physically owning all shares of Coke, all shares of
Hmm.
GE, just like these very basic companies, but have value. So is Michael Saylor with Strategy, and in 5 years, that'll be the richest company in the world. It's like, oh, because they own 1 million Bitcoin. Like
Right.
his goal is to get to 1 million Bitcoin, and he's on the way. And so it's just a new frontier, and there's really exciting things. And it's like this show is not just a Bitcoin. Hey, let's talk about what the price is doing right now. It's like, hey, what could be in a couple of years? And in the same way, like we talk about, hey, what about this idea of like Bitcoin that could back real estate, or this new idea of, hey, let's have a token that we've dreamed up that runs on blockchain, but it could impact investments all throughout the world, and we could impact communities, and not just like, hey, buy your token and get rich quick, meme coin, and then dump it. No, it's like, hey, this coin is here and it's changing lives. Like, how exciting is that we could just start thinking and building, and way smarter guys than you and me that are like, hey, this is an idea, and we're just like at the beginning stages of this. And like you said, uh, well, we're at this point where it's like RWA has been going for a couple of years, but like it's just starting to take off. And so if you don't want to get left behind, you need to start doing your research. You need to start looking at projects that where you could maybe put some capital, or even start building your own. And it's super exciting to see like what the next couple of years are going to be.
Yeah, I continue to think back to the early 90s when we were talking about the internet, right?
Mm,
And I remember when, when I used Google, the search engine, for the first time,
yeah,
right? And we would watch the little clock and be like, hey, check out how quick I could find,
right.
whatever search, right? And it would have the little time clock tell you how quickly it was that the search it was completed in. Well, that was there's that moment, right, when the Amazons and the Googles and really really smart people start to understand the technology to the point where they go, "Hey, there's something here that
Yeah,
is super impactful."
right.
I think that we've been in this trajectory for a bit. Now it's like we're 15 years into the Bitcoin discussion, and then blockchain. People understanding blockchain, they're understanding the impact of it. They're understanding now. We're talking about RWA. Someone's coming out with that Google technology. Someone's coming out with the Amazon. Someone's going to
Yes,
be coming out any day. We're like
yes,
on the cusp of that. And so, are we going to be the ones who were, one of those first movers who said, "Hey, I'm going to put, you know, $10,000 into this Amazon that I'm not sure about, or
right.
Google,"
Yeah.
right? Like those guys. Like I wish I put 10 grand into it back in, when they went public.
Yeah,
But I think we're getting to that point where like we're on the cusp of it, and so
yeah,
people just I just encourage people to pay attention to these concepts and these things that are out there, it might sound new and some of it might sound crazy,
Yeah,
but if you're in the 80s, you would have thought the idea of an internet was crazy,
for sure.
right? Yeah, and so I think that that's where we're at today. Um, yeah, man, this is an exciting time. I think
Yeah,
RWA is super important. I'm glad that we talked about it today. For those who don't know about it,
yeah,
listen, you can send us a message if you're, ask a question. We'd be happy to just answer with the knowledge that we have,
yeah,
and direct you, right? And
for
check out
sure.
Cool It Out.
Check it out. Very cool.
Yeah. Anything else, bud,
I think that's
for
it,
today?
man. I am excited
Yeah.
for Hard Knock. You and I record it as often as we can. We're on different schedules and different continents, but yeah,
Right.
over the next coming weeks and months, I think we're going to hit just more segments of this technology and what's happening in the news, and looking at just different aspects of crypto and blockchain. And so, if you have any ideas, any thoughts, leave us a comment, like, subscribe, and we'll get on it.
Yeah. And I think in the coming weeks, we're going to have some exciting announcements, some new stuff that's
Yeah,
going on that we
for
want to
sure,
talk about.
for
So,
sure.
yep.
Cool, man.
All
All
right,
right,
Andrew, bud. I'll talk to you later.
peace.
Bye, everyone.